Assalamu alaikum. In this video, I am going to teach you Austin's speech act theory and especially the Felicity conditions. So basically, I'll cover little details about Austin and Austin's constitutives and performatives, and then Austin's Felicity conditions. And by the end of the lecture, students will be able to analyze Austin's speech act Felicity conditions. So let's talk about Austin first. Austin was basically a British philosopher and was intrigued by the way that we can use words to do different things, whether one assert or merely suggest, promise or merely indicate an intention, persuade or merely argues, depends not only on the literal meaning of one's word, but what one intends to do with them, and the institutional and social setting in which the linguistic activity occurs. So basically, he pointed out that it's not only the words that matter, but the way that they are used in particular situation, in particular circumstances, will give a different meaning. And those meanings are important. It's not only suggestions or promise, but there are many other intended meanings as well. One thing a speaker might intend to do and be taken to do in saying, I'll be there to pick you up at 6 is to promise to pick her listener up at that time. The ability to promise and to intend to promise arguably depend on the existence of a social practice or set of conventions about what a promise is and what constitutes promising. So basically, the saying of this sentence that I'll be there to pick you up is not only a promise, but the saying that it will be performed as well. Austin especially emphasized the importance of social facts and conventions in doing things with words, in particular with respect to the class of speech acts known as elocutionary acts. So we are going to discuss the elocutionary acts in the next lecture, but for the time being, just it should be clear in mind that he has emphasized upon the social facts and the conventions and the words that are used in proper and specific conventions in particular situations, so that the act will be performed. Now, Austin began by distinguishing between what he called constitutives and performatives. Basically, a constitutive is simply saying something true or false, whereas a performative is doing something by saying. Paradigmatically, one can get married by saying I do. Constitutives are true or false. For example, if somebody is saying I'm walking, so it means that can be true or false. Nothing else is there. But if somebody is saying I promise, then it has something else in it as well. Means if you are doing, you are actually performing something as well. It depending on their correspondence with the facts, performatives are actions, and as such they are not true or false, but felicitous or infelicitous, depending on whether or not they successfully perform the action in question. In particular, performative utterances to be felicitous, one must invoke an existing convention, and secondly, the convention must be invoked in the right circumstances. So there are two important things, that there should be proper convention, existing convention, and there should be right circumstances according to that. Now he has given some felicity conditions as well, especially for performatives. So these conditions must be fulfilled for a speech act to be satisfactorily performed or realized. For a speech act to work, as Austin argues, there are a number of felicity conditions that must be met, but here the most important ones are three. Number one is there must be generally accepted procedure for successfully carrying out the speech act. Also, the circumstances must be appropriate to the use of the speech act, and the person who uses the speech act must be appropriate person to use it in the particular context. Or in simple words, we can say that if there is a proper conventional procedure, accepted convention, and it has a certain conventional effect, then that procedure should include the uttering of the certain words by certain people in certain circumstances. Then only the effect will be produced. Otherwise, it won't happen. Now, for example, if in a wedding the priest is saying, I now declare you husband and wife, then for this situation or for this convention, particular people should be there, that is, the priest or the pope, and bride and groom, and their relatives as well. So, and proper church should also be there, then only this act will be performed. Otherwise, if someone else is saying this sentence in some other context, in some other situation, then obviously this act will not be performed. Same is the case with another example that is mentioned here, that in a launching of a ship, the person who has been invited to launch the ship might say, I hereby name this ship the Titanic. So this will only be done or will be effective only in a particular situation by particular people in particular circumstances. Otherwise, the effect will not be achieved. There are other examples as well, like for example, the example of namaz. If you are saying those particular words, like for example, if you are praying Fajr namaz, so in Fajr namaz, you have the first important thing is that you should do wuzu, then there should be Fajr timings as well. Then you have to perform each and every action along with the words that are required. Then only your namaz will be complete. Otherwise, this act will not take place. If you are thinking of praying Fajr namaz at 12 o'clock, then it will only be possible if in case you are praying qaza. Otherwise, that act will not be achieved. Second point is that the procedure must be carried out correctly and completely. Thus, the bride and the groom should reply, I do, rather than, okay, I suppose so, and the marriage license must be signed. So, the important thing is that if there is, if there a convention is that it should be followed, then it should be followed correctly and completely, then only the act will be complete. Like for example, in this case, if the bride and the groom are not saying I do, then, or instead of saying I do, they are saying something else, then obviously this act will not be performed. Same is the case with namaz. If in namaz someone is saying some other words instead of Surah Hamd, Alhamdulillah, uh, if the person is saying some other dua, then obviously that will not take place. Namaz will not take place. The third condition is that the person must, in most circumstances, have the required thoughts, feelings, and intentions for the speech act to be felicitous. That is, the communication must be carried out by the right person in the right place at the right time, and normally with a certain intention, or it will not work. So here in this point, the important thing is the thoughts, feelings, and intention, that if the convention or the procedure required any particular thought, feelings, and intention, then these should be there. Otherwise, that act will not be achieved. Like for example, in namaz, if the intention is of showing other people that you are praying, then obviously namaz will not take place. So the proper thoughts, feeling, and intention is to pray for Allah, for the will, for Allah. If the first two of these conditions are not satisfied, the act will not be achieved and will be a misfire. That is the condition of number one, particular word, particular people in particular circumstances, and correctly and completely. If this is not complete or achieved, then the act will not be achieved and it will be a misfire. Whereas if the third of these conditions does not hold, then the procedure will be abused. Means if the third condition, that is the thoughts, feeling, and intention, then the act will be achieved, no doubt, but it will be an abuse because there were no thoughts, feelings, and intentions. So that's all for this lecture, Austin's Felicity conditions. We are going to continue some more details of Austin's speech X in the next lecture, in the next video. Thank you so much.